They are currently the biggest boy band on the planet. 5 gorgeous boys from the UK, taking the world by storm, leaving millions of adoring, screaming fans clamouring for more.
Who could have imagined that these boys were actually rejected from the X Factor?
They've officially smashed it in America and everywhere else around the globe.
That was when everyone knew this band was something very special.
And they've made music history by becoming the first British group ever to go straight to #1 in the US with their debut album, outperforming Coldplay, the Spice Girls, and even the Beatles.
When I heard What Makes You Beautiful, I thought, wow, it didn't sound like the usual boy band song.
The boys looked cute, they were running around on the beach. You know, they literally looked like they'd just been polished, preened and styled to perfection.
They are Niall Horan, Zayn Malik, Liam Payne, Louis Tomlinson and Harry Styles. They are One Direction. Seldom has a boy band had such a meteoric rise.
We just feel so grateful to, all the fans who've put us where we are.
3 days after rocking New York's Radio Music City Hall, the boys met at the Rockefeller Plaza to perform on NBC's Today program. And around 15,000 fans turned up to watch. The American fans' response to the British band was reminiscent of the crowd hysteria shown to the Beatles nearly 50 years earlier. And the 1D boys loved it.
It's incredible. I mean, we can't believe we've come over to the US and, we've got fans waiting outside our hotel and stuff. It's unbelievable. We never expected anything like that. We have the fans over here, so we've kind of got to concentrate on that a little bit.
Yeah, so...
we've got the tour coming up as well, so...
Yeah. And also, we're just back from Europe, so we're going to try and get there as soon as possible as well, and just go back out and see the fans again.
Signed to Music Svengali Simon Cowell's label Psycho and Columbia Records, One Direction embodies everything a boy band should be. And with the music maestro's backing, they look set for long-term success right around the world. Their entourage alone now consists of 90 people. Already rumoured to be worth £32 million, the band looks set to double that figure by 2013. Part of One Direction's teen idol appeal is the unique personalities of each member. In the UK, Harry Styles is known as something of a Casanova in the band, and with good reason.
I'd say Harry was the biggest ladies man in the group.
Yeah, no doubt. Look at him, he's just
Look at
keeping
his
quiet
cheeky
now.
grin.
Saying
Look at him.
Harry was always the fun guy. When we were backstage at X Factor, you'd be knocking around trying to find out your bits of gossip. And I remember one story saying, oh, well, Harry's gone missing. And I was like, well, where's he gone missing? And he'd apparently been snogging one of the production people in a cupboard. And so people backstage were checking cupboards to see if Harry was in there snogging one of the costume girls or one of the runners or whoever it was. Harry's a lot of fun, and I think you just gravitate towards someone like that.
On the X Factor, people really saw his cheeky personality. He always pushed the boundaries. He was very cheeky with the ladies, or even though he was only a teenager, always made out that he was a ladies' man.
When Matt Cardle won the show, Harry ran up and embraced him and was overheard saying some very salacious remark about basically how many women Matt was going to get because he won. And I think from that very first sexually charged comment, I think girls were like, whoa, who is this guy? He's like 17, he's acting like he's Casanova. Of course, when he started dating 15 years older presenter Caroline Flack, who was actually a presenter on the show, the whole world took notice of the fact that this guy obviously clearly had something going on.
They were at a hotel at the W in London. They kept sneaking off. And I was kind of like, hang on a minute, she's 32, he's 17. Surely they're not together. But as things kind of progressed and I made a few calls on it, they were.
They became very fond of each other and they were trying to lead this really clandestine relationship, but the paparazzi got onto it. I remember seeing a picture of Caroline going to his house at night with a pillow under her arm, which is a bit weird. I don't know why she was bringing her own pillow to his house. And then the paps were waiting outside the next day and they didn't emerge until several hours later. So that's when people really knew that something was properly going on between those two, and the press went mad for it.
The relationship did really scandalise the country. Everyone was talking about it. It was on the front page of newspapers, the front pages of magazines.
You know, going after a woman when you're 17 who's 32 years old, and by all accounts he pursued her relentlessly, is something that most people, most men would certainly admire and say, you know, good on ya. I think a lot of people like myself found it disturbing, the fact that he was only 17 and she was 32. And Caroline Flack actually got a lot of hate mail, death threats. She got a lot of bad press for the fact that she was, in fact, dating and possibly sleeping with such a young boy.
I think Caroline was extremely upset about the reaction online and through Twitter and through various comments that were made about the stories when it did come out, that everybody wanted to really get aggressive with her and make her feel awful.
What it did for Harry, though, was kind of cement in people's minds that he was the Lothario of the group. He was the heartthrob. He was the one that everybody wanted.
I think it was a genuine romance. I think they really cared about each other. I saw them together. They were happy, absolutely. So it's nobody else's business except theirs. Maybe they'll get back together.
Most recently, news leaked that Harry had had another 3-month affair with 32-year-old married DJ Lucy Horrobin. Their affair began when Harry was still only 17, and it almost wrecked Horrobin's marriage. They met when she interviewed the band for Manchester-based station Key 103.
I have noticed like there's a bit of an older women thing going on with you guys. What is your limit for how old you go?
I wouldn't go any older than my mum.
Yeah, I think my mum, but yeah.
How old is your mum?
I'm more into girls my age, but that's just me.
Me too. 44 as of Friday.
So you'd go no higher than 44?
I don't think
so. I think he probably would.
Apart from his reputation as a Lothario, Harry has also spoken out about the band's musical direction.
He talks about how One Direction's sound is going to have to change slightly. He says, you know, we're 18, it's important that we are performing music that we really enjoy and that we really like. He really looks up to Chris Martin and Coldplay. He talks about the Beatles and how his dad really liked the Beatles and he listens to them. And obviously, he's the one I think will get a bit fidgety later on and start thinking, no, we've got to be playing some serious songs. I don't want us to be playing cheesy boy band numbers, so I think Harry is one to watch in that respect.
He's got the it thing and all the girls love him. He's cheeky, he's a great singer and he loves his music. That's the one thing people don't know about Harry. He's a really, really good musician.
And Harry's Hollywood heartthrob image in the UK has led to rumours about possible movie roles.
He certainly has the looks to be a film star, and that has not escaped the industry. Producers are actually working now on a film about the early years of Mick Jagger's career. And the fact that Harry resembles a young Mick Jagger has not been lost on producers who are very keen to get Harry in the role. Whether or not Harry's going to have time to take on a film role in the midst of all of these tours remains to be seen. And you know, I don't know if Harry has the moves like Jagger, but he certainly seems to have the kind of sex appeal and charisma that Jagger had.
If Harry does break into film acting, he could always get some advice from his best mate in the band, Louis Tomlinson, who enjoys a particularly good relationship with the press.
To be honest, the press on a whole are actually very, very good to us. And although sometimes things are taken a little out of context, the majority of it, you know, has truth about it. And I think kind of have a bit of banter as well, you know. So it's quite fun. Yeah, it is quite funny. I can't really think of something recent that's really like been quite funny for us to read.
Car crash one was.
Oh yeah, on the last music video. It was It was peculiar, Harry, if you will.
It was misconstrued.
I love that. Yeah, apparently on our last music video, we all were in a car crash. And I think, did you die?
I think
Harry possibly died. However, lived to tell the tale. Yeah, he does look good, yeah. So it's good for a dead man. Bit of makeup, sorted.
Louis is somebody who has an acting background. He at a very early age was appearing as an extra, as a small bit part on various television programs. He's got a great look. He has a natural ease in front of the camera. And I think whether it was acting or singing, Louis was always going to be in show business.
Cheeky chappy again, funny haircut, girls love him. Even if he wasn't going to be a solo star, he's perfect for a boy band.
He really wanted a career in showbiz. I think he wouldn't have minded if it was acting, if it was TV presenting. He did Dram growing up, which to me said he wanted to be a star. Some people want to be singers, some people want to be stars. Louis is the prankster of One Direction. When I was backstage at one of the One Direction shows, the boys were given a bottle of very expensive champagne, and it was still a couple of hours before they were even due on stage. And the person who very quickly opened the champagne and started guzzling directly from the bottle was Louis. The others wouldn't have even had a drop of it.
We're quite frankly buzzing.
He said that he failed his first lot of A-levels because he was having too much fun, and I think that really just describes the character that Louis is. He's the one that the rest of the band always talks about as the real joker. He's the one that really likes to party and keeps them all going. Him and Harry have formed a really, really strong connection and friendship, so much so that the fans call them, they've merged their names together and they call them Larry Stylinson.
It was peculiar, Harry, if you will.
It's like the Brangelina of the band. They have this bromance going on.
Louis cites idols such as Michael Jackson, who he completely loves, but his biggest kind of fan experience was when he met Robbie Williams on The X Factor. And Robbie is someone whose career he's followed, someone he really has wanted to be. When he met Robbie on The X Factor, he just said it was the most amazing experience he's ever had, and he was really nice. Robbie was always the joker of Take That. He was the one that was a little bit different, who kind of kept everyone on their toes, and I think there's a lot of Louis in him. He also really likes Ed Sheeran, who's huge in the UK, and he talks about his music and describes it as phenomenal. And they're around about the same age, so I think they've probably seen each other on the circuit and shared similar experiences, although I don't think Ed Sheeran has quite the same level of fan attention as Louis.
With his bad boy image, Zayn Malik is probably the coolest and most elusive member of 1D.
We're just 5 young lads that, love singing and
women.
Performing, and we love women, and women seem to...
Really general, I promise.
We love women, and women seem to like us, so yeah, it's wicked.
And then Zayn, who just looks like this little film star. He walked in and he was very unsure of himself, which was a nice thing about him. Zayn didn't have the confidence that all the other boys had at the first audition. And when everybody was asked to dance, Zayn I think he ran away. I think he went off stage. He didn't want to dance. But Simon went and found him and said, Zayn, get on the stage. This is your chance. This is your moment. This could change your life. And it did.
When Zayn grew up, I think he was a bit of an outcast at school. He felt a bit isolated. His dad's from Pakistan, his mum's from England, and he talks about the fact that I don't think he was bullied, but he was left out a bit at school because of his heritage. But at the same time, he was quite hyperactive when he was at home, and when he was a young kid, he says that his mum had to keep putting him in the pram, even when he was too big for the pram, just to stop him running around all over the place and contain him somehow.
He has that kind of moody, bad boy intensity, that kind of dark good looks. And he has this brooding, dark, James Dean thing, swagger. He's tattooed up. He's got all kinds of tattoos. He's a heavy smoker. He talks about needing to quit. He's very hot, and I think a lot of women who go for the bad boy type are very much attracted to him. Zayn was linked to another X Factor contestant, Rebecca Ferguson, during the UK show.
What was shocking about this relationship is that she was a mum of 2. And the way One Direction had been portrayed in the press up until that point was very much as schoolboys, not really boys who would have serious girlfriends, and definitely not guys who would have serious girlfriends that were mums. So it was quite a sensation when the story first broke.
I think with Zayn, he's a lot different to the other boys. He seems to be quite sneaky. He's always hanging out with the girl. Right now, he's supposedly dating Perry from Little Mix. He's kind of one of those guys that you think when he's older, he's going to be a lot of fun to go out on a night out with. And I'm sure he's probably the one that you have to watch out for.
Liam Payne is often regarded as one of the more grounded members of the group.
Well, Liam actually has had a lot of health problems. As a child, he had a damaged kidney and had to have something like 32 injections morning and night. There was a nurse that his family had to hire to help him with this stuff. And because of that, even now, he has to be really careful what he drinks, even including water, because he still has this very damaged kidney.
So that really has affected him growing up, but it seems to have really shaped him as a character as well, because he picked himself up, he trained for the cross-country team, he really pushed himself hard to prove that that wasn't going to stop him from doing anything, and he went to great lengths to kind of toughen himself up. So he ended up doing boxing training, quite rigorous boxing training. He talks about how he'd get up at 6 a.m. and he'd be fighting his 38-year-old boxing instructor when he's about 12, and he got really, really good at it as well. And I think it made him physically strong, and it made him mentally strong as a character.
Very, very busy, but really exciting.
The band sort of describe him as their unofficial leader. He's the sensible one. He's the one who's always going to be on time, will always keep the others in line. He's the glue that holds the guys together.
Liam's had to grow up fast. You know, having a very serious and life-threatening health condition from a young age and being bullied at school are things that are going to help you shed some of your childhood rather quickly.
I love Liam from day one because I loved his attitude. He had auditioned before as a solo artist. This was his second time back on X Factor, and he definitely had something, and he was a great singer. And I loved the fact that he just so wanted it. And I remember us saying to him, would you like to be in a boy band? And he said, yeah. He wasn't even negative or hesitant about it. They all wanted to be in boy bands. That was the good thing about it. And that's why I worked with the five together.
He's one of the guys who seems to have held on to having a long-term relationship. He's going out with a backing dancer, Danielle Pisa, who he actually met on X Factor.
She's a beautiful girl, she's a beautiful dancer, and they're madly in love. But Danielle has received death threats and all kinds of hate, aggressive, angry messages on Twitter and Facebook from fans of One Direction who are angry that Liam is with her. And this is really kind of part of the dark side, the downside of being a celebrity or being involved with a celebrity. And the boys are really upset, particularly Liam, that the girl he's in love with is being so abused by the fans.
Liam's really stood up for her and just kind of told them all to back off under no uncertain terms, and says the boys all love his girlfriend, get on with her really well. And it's hard, you know, if you're in a band, he doesn't see his girlfriend very often. He's got girls throwing themselves at him all the time. And that is a real testament to his character, that he's still very young, but he's got this long-term girlfriend and seems to be very serious about her.
He was the one that said to me he was interested in songwriting, and that, you know, that's where he thought his career might go. You've got to remember, the experiences of somebody like Liam, what they're going through now, will help with songwriting, because they're sort of going through so many emotions that if you can jot this down, maybe you can write a hit for somebody else in 10 years' time.
He may well be one of the more mature members of the band, but while on tour, Liam still misses the comforts of home and family.
It's a lot to come away from home for so long and stuff, and there's a lot of keeping in touch and keeping in contact. Like, you kind of miss a call in a day, it's kind of hard.
And homesickness is a feeling all the boys know well when they're on tour.
I wouldn't say I miss anything particularly except for like my family and friends. You don't get to spend as much time with your family. But other than that, it's amazing. You know, we've been given a great opportunity and we're just running with it.
Different, but it's kind of like times like that. If you haven't seen your family for a while, sometimes it's quite hard. When you really think about it, I don't think any of us would change it for.
No, never.
Well, it's like being at university a little bit, isn't it? Like being away from home and stuff.
I don't know. I've never been to university.
No, me neither. But I mean, like we're at the same stage as like other kids in their lives where they be away from home, like so. Yeah. It's kind of normal, really, if you think about it.
It's like,
Yeah.
just.
While Harry Styles Cowles may be the golden boy as far as the British fans are concerned, Irish band member Niall Horan has emerged as a star, getting the fans' hearts fluttering stateside.
So Niall is described as the young Justin Bieber of the band, and when he auditioned, actually, he was the one, when I saw his audition initially on TV before this band had been formed, he was the one who I thought instantly massive commercial appeal, because he looked like Justin Bieber and he had that Irish accent, which I think people just find very endearing.
Every boy band has one Irish guy in it, you know. So little Niall Horan was there with a funny haircut, because when he auditioned first in Dublin, he had this silly Justin Bieber haircut, but he had great personality and great likability. And when it came to putting the band together, you have to have an Irish guy in it, so he filled out the numbers.
Probably one of the most musically talented in the band. So he plays guitar, and he talks about how his dad noticed that he was a good singer when he heard him in the back of the car when they were driving along, and his aunt actually said she thought it was the radio, so she didn't realise that it was actually him singing.
Niall loved music really from a very early age. He started playing guitar when he was really young. He always wanted to be a singer. He was very much inspired by people like the Beatles. And I think that Niall always kind of knew that this is what he was destined to do. And I think initially when the band was put together, it was hard for Niall perhaps not to be the lead singer. I think he always saw himself as a solo artist, and he had to kind of take a step back, especially as his fellow bandmate Harry Styles was getting all the female attention. And I think for Niall, the American kind of crazy mania over him has probably been really gratifying, because they've turned him into the star that he always believed that he had the potential to be.
You kind of felt like with Niall that he really knew the business side of it. To me, he came across as the one that was asking questions about how much they would make, how long it would last, what should they do next. You know, he just kind of knew what he was doing. You know, he's very young, 16 and a half when I met him. Very young, but knew the business.
He actually said that he was, you know, the Irish version of Justin Bieber. He wants to be bigger than the likes of Justin and Beyonce. So maybe he is just a big dark horse, and we need to get to know this person even more.
He's very sweet, he's very fun-loving. His dad has talked about the fact that he's never really had one proper girlfriend, but there was a girl in Ireland, in his hometown, that he was very fond of and still is to this day. So whenever he goes back, he kind of gets to see her and just hang out with his kind of mates. And really, Niall is someone who completely remembers his roots and loves going back to Ireland and what it reminds him of. He did try and dye his hair brown, and he texted Simon Cowell asking if he could dye his hair brown not too long ago, and Simon Cowell said in no uncertain terms, you cannot, because obviously he's got his own trademark. He's got his kind of strawberry blonde hair. That is what makes Niall, and it's quite cute because at the height of his fame, he's been wearing a clear brace while he's been doing all his touring, but the girls don't seem to mind at all.
But how did it all begin for One Direction?
In 2010, there were 5 guys who had all auditioned for solo spots in the boys category on X Factor.
As they came on, I used to say, God, he'd be great in a boy band. Sam used to say to me, oh, everybody be in a boy band. If you had your way, everybody would be in a boy band. When I saw Zayn and I saw Liam and I saw Louis, I was thinking, boy band, boy band, boy band, all along.
They failed to get into the kind of final as the boys, and you saw the disappointment on their face. And then suddenly, one of the judges decided it would be a good idea to put these 5 boys into a group.
It was interesting because there was competition between the judges, because on screen it was actually Nicole Scherzinger who came up with the famous line, we should put some boys together to form a band. However, since then, Simon Cowell has actually said it was really his idea and Nicole just was given credit for it on screen. But Nicole Scherzinger says she's the woman behind One Direction.
The reason One Direction are successful and the reason One Direction are the biggest boy band around the moment is all down to, I I hate to say this, but it's all down to Simon Cowell.
I can remember when the decision was made to bring them together as a group, and the main person I noticed was Harry, because he seemed to get quite a bit of airtime. The producers had obviously realised there was something quite cheeky about him. I think he was chatting someone up, actually, one of the other contestants in the canteen, and they caught him on the X Factor. So I remember him, and I remember just his kind of overwhelming joy when he found out that he was actually going to go through into the band.
The first time I ever met One Direction really was after X Factor, you know, when they bring him into the room and all this. And they're very gauche young men and very, very, very young. And you could see that they loved the experience of being asked questions. And I think, for me, the most charismatic at that point and the most lovable to the pack was Harry.
I met the boys all the way right at the beginning, and One Direction backstage were an absolute nightmare. Anyone behind the scenes on X Factor was just like, oh my God, we've lost Harry, we've lost Louis, where have they gone? You know, that one's hiding in a cupboard, that one's trying on new clothes. They were the life and soul of X Factor that year.
Oh yeah! It was really when I saw them behind the scenes that you could really tell that they had formed a bond and that they were like brothers. Because interestingly, the judges had also put together a girl group on the show that year called Bellamy. And Bellamy were the exact opposite to One Direction. They hated each other, they didn't get on, there was no good bonding between them.
With One Direction formed, the boys started to find their feet as a band. But it took some time for their momentum to build.
So what's your names, guys, anyway?
I'm Louis.
Louis?
Niall.
Harry.
I saw there was definitely a chemistry between the five boys, even though they were put together by Simon and me and everybody else in the show. But there was a genuine chemistry. They became friends. The five boys, it just worked.
I think our friendship's quite evident on like interviews like this. Like, we're just full of banter. We just have a great laugh. It's like 5 best friends at school.
With One Direction, it's hard to say, you know, everybody wants to stake claim to the fact that they saw instantly their power, their fame and their talent. Not really, I didn't know. I kind of thought, cute guys, we need that more in the charts right now. Did I really think they were going to be that big? Not particularly, because you've got to remember, at that point, JLS were the hottest thing, and everybody was kind of looking to replicate what they'd done.
All the way through the X Factor, you saw One Direction just grow and grow. In terms of their confidence on stage, their popularity, the screams in the studio when they came on stage were just kind of deafening, much bigger than screams for anybody else. And even when you're watching it at home, everyone was talking about One Direction, whatever age they were. So you'd have really young girls, they'd all have a One Direction member that they really liked, and then you'd have people in their kind of 40s, grands, loving One Direction. A lot of older women were obsessed with different members of One Direction, and the great thing about it was there was something for everyone.
There was always something different about One Direction. It was almost as if they became a pop band on the show. They were 5 clean-cut, good-looking young guys with no baggage. They had the platform of the X Factor, which was that series, the most popular show on British television.
Simon definitely had a twinkle in his eye when the idea of forming these 5 very good-looking, very individual and clean-cut looking boys into a band. You just could tell that they had this star quality from the moment they got together and they started performing on stage. They really gelled immediately. They really looked like they were enjoying themselves so much, and they just kind of looked perfect, and Simon knew it.
They've really represented the teenagers well, and they went out on a high.
Within 4 weeks, the boy band was Simon Cowell's last act in the competition. And they took to being in front of a huge audience like ducks to water.
There is a build-up of anticipation when you get to it, but once you're on the stage and you're performing, it kind of takes over you. You just become a performer.
Who could have imagined that these boys were actually rejected from the X Factor when they all auditioned as individual acts? When you put them all together, the combination is, well, spectacular.
They were the craziest scenes at the X Factor I can remember. So I remember a couple of weeks before the final, and I was sitting in the canteen where all the contestants sit, and One Direction had come in to have their dinner. And the fans who were outside had realised that One Direction were in this canteen area and had climbed up the trees and started to climb on the roof of the canteen. And this was at the point when they were still only contestants on a reality TV show.
In the end, the new boy band actually finished in 3rd place in the competition, behind runner-up Rebecca Ferguson and winner Matt Cardle.
As the show progressed, they built a fan base. They started to get some momentum. And despite the fact that they didn't win or even come in 2nd, I think Simon Cowell very astutely understood that this band had a lot of potential.
I remember on the live shows there was total hysteria in the studio every time One Direction were on stage. Even though they didn't win the show, there was mass hysteria inside. But also, what people don't know was that outside, there was always 200 or 300 girls looking for One Direction. So then we knew we were onto something great. Even though they didn't win the show, One Direction were the real winners.
Immediately after the final, their song Forever Young, which would have been released if they had won the X Factor, was leaked onto the internet. With X Factor over and One Direction finishing 3rd, the question looming was, could the band's popularity continue without the show's very public spotlight?
Once the boys had completed X Factor, there was this sort of lull period that you kind of wondered, well, what's going to happen to One Direction?
We were all in the showbiz industry itching for another boy band to come through. JLS were on the down low. You know, you had the girl groups that had all had huge success, but the time was perfect.
And the buzz in the industry and the buzz in magazines and in newspapers was, of course, that these boys were going to be the next big thing. So Matt Cardle, who won the show, was kind of being shunted around. Rebecca Ferguson was being deemed as this new brilliant voice. But really what the fans of that show wanted were these gorgeous-looking boys.
The discovery of One Direction wasn't just perfect timing for the band. It was also vital for Simon Cowell, who had recently lost one of the biggest boy bands in history. The 4 Irish boys from Westlife had just announced their retirement.
It didn't take long before Simon Cowell signed One Direction. The X Factor finished in December. In January, they'd signed a $2 million deal with Psycho, which is Simon Cowell's company. And then a few months after that, they signed to Columbia Records in the States.
And I think Simon, from the very beginning, maybe even in that semi-final, could already see how the American market would embrace this very Bieber-esque boy band. Instead of, one Justin, you have multiple Justins, and the exponential selling power that would bring.
After New Kids on the Block, NSYNC and Backstreet Boys, there hasn't been another boy band in America. So Simon knows he saw a gap in the market. He had to fight UK boys. They're like the Monkees. So he knew he could do it in America. Simon knows what he's doing. He always knows what he's doing. I hate to say that. I hate to say Simon did it, but he did it. He made it happen.
I just believe that One Direction was so perfect as a package, it was almost impossible to think that they wouldn't have succeeded in the American market, even though so many boy bands there have failed.
Simon Cowell effectively owns One Direction because they were on his show, they signed to his record label, so any money they make in the States or worldwide, Simon Cowell will get a cut of it. So he's behind it, and I think with X Factor, he's always looking for an act that can transcend the UK market. So people like Leona Lewis, she went global. You've got Susan Boyle, who went global on Britain's Got Talent, and that's what he wants. That's where the money lies for him, and that is a mark of his incredible success.
Now, bear in mind, Simon Cowell has spent an awful lot of time working in the United States. He spends at least half the year there, if not more. Simon was already thinking of the American market and the potential therein.
Simon is very powerful in the business. He knows how to break an act in America. He saw a gap in the market.
All the pieces seemed to be falling into place for One Direction. But they still needed the most important thing of all, a hit single. And Simon Cowell knew exactly who he wanted to guide the boys in the creation of their first hit.
One of the very savvy things that Simon did from the very beginning was to put One Direction together with Savin Kotecha, who is about as American as you get. You know, a guy from Austin, Texas would have had a real feel for the American country music scene, really a finger on the pulse of the heartland of America. He's written for very famous American artists like Carrie Underwood and Usher. He has a great resume, and it was very smart on the part of Simon to put this band together with somebody who clearly knows both the UK and the US market.
He's the guy, really, who is, I suppose, the mastermind. You know, he's had so many hits through Britney Spears, Leona Lewis, Usher, you name it. He's the man with the Midas touch.
When you team 5 boys like that up with a songwriter like that, you just know that you're going to have a hit on your hands.
Kotecha's songs have featured on no less than 10 UK #1 albums to date, and he's had 15 top 10 UK singles, including JLS's The Club Is Alive. His songs have won many awards, but his single with One Direction was to prove one of his greatest successes ever.
You don't know you're beautiful. If only you saw what I can see, you'll understand why I want you so desperately.
What Makes You Beautiful was the first single that One Direction released, and I remember the anticipation around that single was quite incredible.
Their entire career hinged on whether this song was going to be a hit or not.
It actually was first released on YouTube, and you didn't see the video to start with, so you just saw the kind of lyrics play up. And actually, that's where part of the skill came in the marketing of One Direction, because this fever was, you know, was really building.
Everyone else in the room can see it. Everyone else but you. Baby, you light up my world like nobody else.
What Makes You Beautiful was One Direction's big moment. You know, it was that single that you just wanted to hear on the radio. It was everywhere. It didn't just work for the UK, it worked for America as well. The boys looked cute, they were running around on the beach. You know, they literally looked like they'd just been polished, preened and styled to perfection.
When I heard What Makes You Beautiful, I thought, wow. It didn't sound like the usual boy band song.
It's so catchy, it's bubblegum pop, you know, it's a really positive song with a message about how beautiful this girl is who isn't aware of her own prettiness. I mean, it's about as affirming and up as you can get.
The lyrics for What Makes You Beautiful are exactly part of the appeal of One Direction, because they really tap in to what young girls are thinking and what they want these guys to be saying back to them. So it's like, you know, you don't need to have any makeup, it's what's inside that counts, all the cheesy stuff that every girl wants to truly believe One Direction thinks about them.
It has a very strong, not very subtle, psychological message, which is, I want you. Do you want me? I want you. You're amazing. And I think that was very much a part of their initial image in getting young girls to like them. They seemed very accessible. They seemed like you could date one of them. You know, they didn't seem to be arrogant or haughty in any way. And I think that was a big part of their initial success.
You don't know you're beautiful. That's what makes you beautiful.
What Makes You Beautiful was a huge hit, smashing straight into #1 in countries all around the world. But even greater fortune was around the corner for the boys when they released their debut album, Up All Night. It became the fastest-selling debut album of 2011 in the UK. And remarkably, in 2012, it went straight to #1 in America, making One Direction the first British pop band in music history to achieve a #1 in the US with their first album.
We co-wrote a few songs on the album as well, so that was really exciting to work with producers and stuff. We had our choice of how this order of the album goes. Then there's loads of things that we get our choice on. Really, we just have our input every so often just to.
But even if we haven't written on a song and something comes in and we're like, oh, I'm not too sure about this lyric. Obviously that's not classed as a co-write, but we still, even the songs that we don't write on, have a little look at it, and if we don't agree with it, we'll have our say.
What goes in the sleeve and stuff, so it's pretty good.
When Simon, you know, put together with the group, their first album, Up All Night, he really did call in some favors. He didn't just kind of throw the boys out there. He very cleverly enlisted the help of some very big names like Kelly Clarkson, Ed Sheeran, and Red One to perform with the boys. And I think that was very savvy, again, because it gave kind of them an instant credibility and an instant name recognition in terms of fans of, you know, Kelly Clarkson. Obviously, these boys were good enough to sing with her. Bear in mind, Kelly Clarkson owes Simon Cowell a few favors because she was the winner of American Idol several years ago. So Simon clearly wasn't afraid to call in some favors in making this album, and it definitely paid off.
The thing about Simon is an A&R man. People forget that's what he did all his life. A&R, artist and repertoire. He picks songs and he picks artists. So he had an amazing amount of songs because he knew Westlife were coming to an end. So he had all these new producers. He had Steve Mack, he had Red One. He had an awful lot of great songs on his desk, waiting for the right act to come along. And guess what? The right act came along. It was One Direction on his show. So he had his own show, his own band, his own label. He owned this whole thing.
But that's what's made it work, you know, and it's been one of the best years I've ever had.
Simon Cowell, it seems, had it all. And he was adamant that he was going to guide One Direction all the way to the top.
The kind of advice Simon gave us was just like the first thing he said was be the band that you want to be.
I think Simon, would love you to crack the US. Do you think being on something like Glee would massively help with that?
Yeah, I think it must be one of the biggest shows in America, Glee, right?
Every little helps.
I think, you know, if our song was to get covered sorry. I think if our song was to get covered on it, you know, it'd be a massive platform for us in America. It'd be amazing.
One Direction's debut album, Up All Night, is just the sort of album you would imagine they would make, and perfect for them. It's so catchy, you know, really upbeat, your perfect kind of pop album.
This is what girls would put on if they're having a pyjama party, hanging around at other people's houses, and of course the songs, you know, What Makes You Beautiful. It's the sort of thing a girl would sit and look at the album cover and go, is Harry gonna marry me? And it's simply that, isn't it?
For a debut album, the success of Up All Night for One Direction is just quite incredible. Debuted at number 2 in the UK, it went straight to number 1 in 20 countries, and the biggest mark of their success was the success in Canada and America, because it was the first UK act ever to get its debut at number 1 in the Canadian charts and the US Billboard 200, and that was when everyone knew this band was something very special.
The international success of Up All Night is no accident. One Direction's clean-cut image in America has been carefully nurtured by Team Cowell.
American audiences are pretty tough when it comes to how they want their celebrities to look. And there were a lot of rumors that when the boys were preparing for their big Today Show appearance, they had been given a brand new stylist, they'd had a trainer, they had a new hairstylist, makeup artist, all of that stuff, because Simon wanted them to look their best. They're being groomed for international superstardom, and a lot of money is being spent on their images and also the way they look.
I think the US reception to One Direction has been extraordinary. I don't think anybody who's working on the band themselves actually expected it to be what it is. You know, they can't leave a hotel without being mobbed. I was in New York recently, and One Direction were in a hotel, and there were 70 girls camped out overnight. So if you put it on that level, you just think, okay, A, why are their parents letting them do this? But B, what are these boys going to be able to do in life?
It's incredible. I mean, we can't believe we've come over to the US and, you know, we've got fans waiting outside our hotel and stuff. It's unbelievable. We never expected anything like this. The fans have been absolutely incredible.
One Direction would not be where they were today if it had not been for the American market. It's not to say that the Brits didn't love One Direction, that they weren't popular over here, but they might have very easily, in fact, I think, gone the way of other X Factor sensations here in the UK. I think what has launched them into international superstardom is the fact that the rest of the world, America, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, has reacted as if they were the Beatles.
And then came the boys' single, One Thing.
Something's gotta give now, 'cause I'm dying just to make you see that I need you.
In the UK, One Thing peaked at number 9, becoming the 3rd consecutive top 10 single from Up All Night. One Thing also peaked at number 6 in America.
It was, again, a real catchy song. I don't think anyone really knew that that was going to be released as a single, but I think the fans really loved it. And it actually had a bit of a Jonas Brothers type feel to it. Instantly, again, when you heard it on the album, you knew it was going to be a hit. And they just seem to be churning them out, and they can do no wrong.
One Thing was, of course, not really a single for the US market, but this is the beauty, I suppose, of the download age, because the fans tell you what they want to hear. In the old days, record companies like Simon would say this is the next single. Now, because of the fact that you can buy it on iTunes, the fans and, of course, the band themselves all stated on Twitter this was their favourite track to record.
One Direction's Up All Night tour was sold out within minutes of release.
It's just insane that, you know, if for people to kind of want to see us to that extent is incredible for us, and obviously we've made the album, really proud of it, so we just want to make a good show for everyone to come and enjoy, and hopefully it will be.
And in February and March 2012, their 62 concerts in America sold out completely. On both sides of the Atlantic, One Direction are a true 21st century internet phenomenon, with their fan base growing daily on social networking sites like Facebook and Twitter, bringing them ever closer to their millions of adoring fans.
They all have their like individual personalities and that like they're all like different. Like,
and they're amazing
singers.
and they're really good singers and they're really good looking.
And they let their personalities show when they're like singing and when they're fit.
They're well fit.
Well fit. I like Harry. I like Zayn. Harry, I love you.
There's one for each of you.
Yeah.
One of the things that they like about us is that we don't try and kind of act as like this big intimidating thing. We act quite like the kind of people that they go to school with. So I think, you know, the fact that we can kind of talk about the same things and actually just have a normal conversation, I think that's something that then would make them like us because they can relate to us and stuff.
Because you're not putting on.
Yeah, it's
you're
not.
just being yourself.
We're not trying to act like this big kind of character thing. It's just.
This is who we are.
Yeah, we're just normal.
Their management employs a social media team. The boys tweet themselves, and it all helps create the illusion that they couldn't be any closer to their fans.
So how did you guys hear about it, and when did you? So you heard through Twitter, and
I like love it here.
They'll retweet things, they'll really engage with them, and that is something so powerful that once upon a time pop stars never had. It means that the fans really believe that they are connecting with these idols and they stand a chance of going out with them, and that's just how it's really exploded.
They already had an American following from the internet before they ever had set foot in the country. So the fact that there's Twitter and the band members themselves all tweet to their fans directly. You have Facebook fan groups, you have individual Facebook pages. All of these things have propelled this group into the stratosphere.
And Zayn, in particular, is regarded as something of a philosopher on the web.
Zayn, you're quite philosophical on Twitter. Like, I have noticed that. Are you kind of like that then in real life?
Yeah, I tend to think quite philosophically. So I just try to get that out across on Twitter. But yeah, when I'm talking to fans and stuff, I do just like to be myself.
Zayn actually has a motto for every single day. He makes up a new motto for every single day. I think that's amazing.
Do you really? Where do you get the mottos from?
It's the brain.
You've not got one of those calendars where it like turns over and you've got a new phrase for the day?
No, I haven't got one of them.
And he even says he's open to dating fans from Twitter.
I do like to tweet like
we're deep meaning.
When you have an epiphany, like you just let it all out.
With Justin Bieber, he was kind of the first artist that really used Twitter and all of his fans that he could directly connect with to progress his career. Now, One Direction, you've got 5 Justin Bieber types. And they've all got millions of followers. They're all making sure that, you know, when the single comes out, it's instantly spread across the world. You know, you can't underestimate the amount of power that these boys do have.
But being constantly at the fans' beck and call on the World Wide Web also has its downside for the boys.
I think One Direction have really put the spotlight on the sinister side of these social networking groups, because the obsession kind of goes to some quite scary levels, and you've seen any girl that they're connected with, those girls get targeted quite viciously and have been the subject of quite a few kind of death threats and hate campaigns, and it's not very nice.
If they even look at a girl, or God forbid are dating a girl, the girl gets like destroyed by angry, aggressive, trolling fans who start attacking her on Twitter, giving death threats, finding her on Facebook.
If any girl goes near one of those boys, then they're on Twitter, they're in trouble, because those One Direction girls and those fans do not take any prisoners. So if you're out there and you're going to go near one of the guys, watch out.
I don't think the band themselves really like to see that side of their fans. They've spoken out, in fact, in defence of girls that they've been connected with, and said, can you just leave them alone? This is not what being a fan of One Direction is all about.
A lot of people now know how to contact them through Twitter or Facebook. They don't have any anonymity as well. So it's very, very tricky. It's not all positive.
One Direction's web-savvy fans were responsible for the group's career highlight to date.
Hi, we're One Direction, and we're at the Brits 2012. Woo!
Incredibly, in 2012, What Makes You Beautiful won the award for Best British Single at the Brit Awards, pipping the unstoppable Adele at the post. And it was the 1D fans who voted them into success.
First of all, we would like to thank every single person that voted for us. The fans around the world have been absolutely incredible to us since we told them that we got nominated for a Brit, and it's an absolute pleasure to collect it, and just thank you very much.
I think it did take a few people by surprise, but it really just cemented them as such a powerful presence on the pop scene, and they were genuinely so excited, jumping up and down, and you couldn't help but be pleased for them.
Oh yeah! Thanks again.
Their fans just voted and voted and voted. Nobody else had a chance. It was never going to be Adele. It was always going to be One Direction. And they won.
They couldn't quite believe it. And when I spoke to them afterwards, they were kind of in a dream, because, of course, you've got to remember, prior to that, a year ago, they would have been sat at home watching this show on their sofa and dreaming of doing that. I mean, Harry said to me, I have to take all of this in because these are golden moments. I don't want to forget this. And I thought that was a really nice thing, that he was kind of mature enough to realise that this had come very quickly and very fast to him, and he wanted to enjoy it.
I think, we're 18, 19, 20 years old, like, people like us don't get to do stuff like what we're doing very often, and we just feel so grateful to, all the fans who've put us where we are, all the radio, music channels who've helped us along the way, and, we're just so grateful to have this massive opportunity, and we're having fun and working hard, and hopefully it keeps going.
But just as the band were at their peak, they were hit with a hammer blow that threatened to destroy them, just as they had blazed onto the music scene.
So everything's been going brilliantly for One Direction, and then suddenly there could be an appearance in court, not only for them, but Simon Cowell and the people who work for him, because One Direction are being sued for trademark infringement by a Californian band who've already got the same name.
Nobody expected, when they put together this band on the UK X Factor, that it was going to be an international sensation. And when they chose the name One Direction, they just chose a name that nobody really checked if it had been registered internationally, not even daring to dream that that could ever be an issue.
People read things like this and think, oh, well, that'll go away, but actually it's a very serious matter. If they've been trading under that name already, they could easily go to court, which they are threatening to take it all the way. They're saying, Simon Cowell and Psycho have not listened to them properly, and, they're going to go full pout. They could end up winning they get to keep the name One Direction. Our One Direction, who are already, you know, global stars, that's how we know them, might have to completely change their name.
It's nothing new because Westlife had a very similar problem. When they started out, they were called West Side Life, and there was already a band called that in America.
I know that One Direction's crew are very confident that they will be able to continue using the name. It would be almost unbelievable to think that the biggest boy band in the world right now would ever be forced to change their name, and it's very hard to think what on earth they would call themselves other than One Direction now.
I don't think there's a chance in hell that Simon is going to let this go without a massive fight. You know, One Direction have managed to get themselves in the charts in pretty much every territory around the globe. Simon's worked really hard on them. So if this band One Direction from before that are claiming that it's their name wants a fight, then Simon Cowell is going to be all guns blazing to make sure that they do not lose that name.
Every aspect of One Direction's marketing has been crafted with precision timing, and their merchandising has gone through the roof. Right now, incredibly, it's proving almost as popular as their music. Recently, they signed up to a major mobile phone promotion.
It's like you get a One Direction phone. There's exclusive wallpapers and stuff, videos. There's like stickers and stuff in the box.
Is the fact that you can. I think it's got like an easy access to like Twitter and Facebook and stuff, so you can keep up to date with like what we're doing on Twitter and all that kind of stuff. So that's pretty good on the technical side of things.
One Direction have already had about 3 books out in the space of 6 months. They had One Direction Forever Young, which was their first official book on the back of X Factor. That came out straight after X Factor. That went to #1 in the Sunday Times bestseller list, which is quite incredible.
The thing about One Direction is it's global. It's not just Ireland, England. It's everywhere. It's America. I know they're massive in Italy and France and all around Europe, where most boy bands don't break. So it's a global phenomenon. They're going to make a fortune. On the touring, the records, the merchandising will be huge.
To top it all, One Direction released their first official calendar, the 2012 calendar, and by the 15th of December, Amazon had announced that this calendar was the best-selling calendar, not just of the year, but of all time.
It is extraordinary to have these 5 boys who we all used to hang out with backstage at X Factor and would be larking around, now being flown over to America where they're mobbed everywhere, and now they're dolls. I mean, you just couldn't write a story like this.
To ensure One Direction's success in the United States, they have to maintain a wholesome image, something that may be easier said than done.
We're getting to the point where they're going to have to start keeping a bit of an eye on them. Obviously, Harry's only 17 in the UK and he's been going out to bars, never drinks, but he's in bars and, you know, wants to go to nightclubs. He wants to hang out with his older friends. All of the other guys, you've got Louis, who's a little bit older as well. They are going to have to be kept in check in some way. And I think at the moment they're absolutely fine. But it's important that they keep this squeaky clean image. You know, America will not cope if any of them start falling out of nightclubs, if there's drug talk, if there's drink talk. It's not cool. To be a brand in America, you need to be clean.
There were also a lot of rumors in the press that after the boys did so well in the US, Simon gave each of them £2 million as a bonus.
One Direction's journey really has been a pop fairy tale. But where do they go from here? It would seem that for the boys from the X Factor, the only direction is all the way to the top.
Knowing Simon, he always wants more. He's never complacent. He always wants it to be bigger and better. And he always wants everybody to work harder. So he will invest. He'll get the best producers in the world now for this band. And I just think they're going to be the biggest boy band of all time. I'm a little bit jealous, but I'm glad for him. Sort of.
The future is very bright for this boy band. You know, some people would say they're 15 minutes of fame. Well, that's already passed, and they are still going strong. The fact that they have announced a 2013 arena tour in giant, enormous stadiums says to me that this band is definitely here to stay.
I think the next 5 years is going to be absolutely incredible for One Direction, actually. I think the world is their oyster, absolutely. They can definitely become the biggest music sensation in the world. Everything is there for that to happen.
Nobody predicted that they would have this huge success. No one predicted it would go worldwide. And I think everyone's still in a state of shock about what has happened.
The reception that this band has found around the world really goes to show that they have a universal appeal. And I don't think that One Direction is going anywhere but up.
Every day is different, we have so much fun. And it's just, I don't know, I can't imagine being like a solo artist or something now, because you have so much fun in a group and just kind of blending together, and that's what makes it all enjoyable.
This band are on a roll, and it's global, and it's massive, and it's all because they went for a show called X Factor.
Hello and welcome to today's Thought of the Day. I'm Louis Tomlinson, and here's my thought of today. You're insecure, I don't know what for. You're turning heads when you walk through the door. Don't need makeup to cover up. Being the way that you are is enough. Everyone else in the room can see it. It's everyone else but you. Baby, you light up my world like nobody else. The way that you flip your hair gets me overwhelmed. But when you smile at the ground, it ain't hard to tell. You don't know, And you don't know you're beautiful. Thank you.